Frozen plains, mountains with white peaks glistening in the distant sun, and rustic red snow. Welcome to Pluto, where nothing makes sense anymore. Looking at it from a distance, the ice ball planet is mostly predictably winter shades of white and light blue. Once you land on the surface, you'll notice familiar blue skies as well. But see that whale-shaped red stain running along the equator? Right there to the left of the white heart-shaped region, there she blows. This spot is bigger than Alaska, and it's a mystery to scientists. That's not red clay soil or anything you'll see on Earth. That's Pluto's version of ice. Scientists believe it's red because the atmosphere drops this strange soot-like chemical called tholin on the surface. It's the same stuff that explains the red cap on Pluto's moon Charon. Now, let's zoom in closer on the whale. Oh look, we have a mountain range. Yes, Pluto's red ice is like rock, hard enough to form entire mountains. Those white peaks standing out against the dark red aren't snowy caps like we have on Earth. That's frozen methane. For such a small planet, Pluto's mountains are epic, bigger than Everest and made entirely of ice. Such a bizarre landscape can't be found anywhere else in our solar system. Yeah, Pluto's a pretty harsh cold place. Temperatures there can dip to minus 400 degrees Fahrenheit. The coldest ever recorded on Earth was in Antarctica, a measly minus 135. Now let's head back to the heart of Pluto. That's actually a vast plain covered in nitrogen ice. Scientists discovered that Pluto's heart makes the winds on the planet blow. Craters are also big, and some of them show signs of filling and erosion. That's something that happens right here on Earth. When land is worn away and shaped by natural forces like wind, water, and ice, that's erosion. So, what makes all this so special on Pluto? It could be evidence of tectonic plate activity. You know, big plates of land surfing on liquid rock, forming mountain chains, breaking continents apart, putting them back together. That's something scientists so far have only ever seen on Earth, not on any other planet in the solar system. Now, looks like Pluto could be more like our own planet. That, and there's water on Pluto, 1/3 of its surface in fact. But of course, it's not like Earth water. It's more like a rocky slushy. Yum. Still, no signs of life out there, at least not for now. It's taken a long time to get the little information we know about Pluto. It was first discovered almost 100 years ago and deemed the 9th planet from the Sun, until 2006 when its official planet membership card was revoked. Poor Pluto. It was dubbed the biggest dwarf planet in the Kuiper Belt, a region outside our solar system full of other dwarf planets and icy bodies circling the Sun. A few months before that, they launched the New Horizons mission. It was the first space probe researchers sent to Pluto in 2006. Zipping at over 35,000 miles per hour, that's 45 times the speed of sound, it still took the probe almost a decade to reach its destination. That's how far away the tiny planet is. In fact, Pluto is nearly 40 times the distance from Earth to the Sun. If you were there looking up at the sky, you'd see the Sun as a tiny dot like any other star in the sky. Once New Horizons finally reached Pluto in 2015, it got close enough to get some incredible pictures of the surface. It also collected important data and observations, like those strange red spots and that heart-shaped region. But Pluto gets even stranger, especially its orbit. Most other planets go around the Sun in almost perfect circles with the Sun close to the center. The Sun is nowhere near the center of Pluto's orbit, and the orbit is so stretched out that Pluto sometimes crosses into Neptune's path and gets closer to the Sun than the blue gas giant. So, the unusual effect of the strange orbit? Pluto sometimes has an atmosphere, and sometimes not. When it's closer to the Sun, a thin atmosphere of nitrogen forms. But once the planet starts moving further away from our Sun, the atmosphere freezes and falls to the surface in an ice storm of epic proportions. Pluto is probably a lot smaller than you imagine. If you put it on a map of the Earth, it would only span about halfway across the US. Yet this little planet has 5 moons spinning around it. And life on Pluto would be one endless year for us humans. Imagine no birthdays your whole life. Since it was discovered in 1930, we still haven't seen it complete a full circle around the Sun. 1 year on Pluto is 248 Earth years, and we'll finally see that happen on March 23, 2178. Mark your calendar. Since Pluto got kicked out of the official Planet Club, Neptune became the last one in line. It's actually a big ball of ice and gas. So, like with the other gas giants, if you tried to land on this planet, you'd just keep going deeper and deeper into seemingly endless clouds and atmosphere. Funny thing about the blue planet, it might not have a rocky surface like you and I are used to, but its surface-level gravity is about the same as Earth's. Same can't be said for any other planet in the solar system. As we make our way closer to the Sun, we pass the next gas giant, Uranus, that non-conformist planet that goes around the Sun basically rolling on its side. One full orbit is 84 Earth years, so you might be lucky enough to celebrate your first birthday in your whole life there. Only one party, so you better make it count. And now we approach the jewel of the solar system, Saturn, the second biggest planet after Jupiter and another gas giant where you'd sink in an endless atmosphere if you tried to land a spaceship there. Saturn is the least dense planet of them all, meaning if you put it in a giant glass of water, it'd float. Those famous rings are made up of dust, ice, and rock. Some as tiny as a grain of sand, others bigger than houses. But get this, Saturn's rings are raining down on the planet, enough to fill an Olympic-sized pool in a half an hour. At that rate, the famous blue ring system will disappear completely in 300 million years. By the way, Neptune, Uranus, and Jupiter also have rings. They're just not as visible and bright as Saturn's. Imagine combining all the planets into one. Now make it 2 times bigger. Still not as large as Jupiter. Scientists called it a failed star, since it's mostly made of helium and hydrogen, just like our Sun. But jumbo-sized Jupiter still isn't massive enough to kickstart the chemical processes that could turn it into a star. It's the fastest spinning planet, so it takes only 10 hours to complete a full rotation on its axis. Imagine trying to squeeze sleep, work, friends, hobbies, movies, shopping, your whole routine in less than half an Earth day. Magnificent tall mountains, the highest in the entire solar system. The most epic dust storms ever. Deep valleys, craters. I'm talking Mars, our potential home in the future. If you love sunsets, you'd definitely enjoy Martian ones. They're incredibly blue, while the sky throughout the day is pinkish red. Even though Mars is our closest neighbor, from the surface, the Sun would look half the size it does from Earth. So, not as close as it seems. Oh, and if you always dreamed of becoming a basketball player, Mars is your place. The red planet's gravity is only 37% of Earth's, so you jump 3 times higher there. Venus is a planet of extremes. The hottest surface, the most volcanoes, the brightest planet, and the closest one to Earth. It's also the slowest spinning and barely rotates, making a day on Venus last 243 Earth days. You could literally walk faster before the planet makes a complete turn. Venus also rotates in the opposite direction that Earth does, so sunrises are in the west and the sun sets in the east. Mercury. It doesn't have any moons or rings, and we're talking about the smallest planet in the whole solar system. A year lasts only 88 days, so if you live there, you'd have a lot of birthdays. Mercury is the closest planet to the Sun, but it's actually not the hottest. That prize goes to Venus. Temperatures on Mercury don't get as high as on Venus because it doesn't have an atmosphere to trap heat from the Sun. What Mercury does have is wrinkles. Its iron core cooled and shrank, causing the surface to contract too, and leaving all those wrinkles. That, or because it's so close to the Sun with no SPF. Maybe.
Frozen plains, icy mountains with their snow-capped tops glistening in the sun, valleys, craters, eternal freezing winter.
Wow. Hello there, Pluto. At first sight, it looks like a paradise for adventurers who love skiing, snowboarding, and all the other fun things you can do in snowy winter wonderlands. But the snow there is not like what you can find on the mountains of Earth. On Pluto, the mountain peaks are covered with frozen methane, while down here they're made of frozen water crystals. Because of its specific chemical composition, the snow on Pluto is red. The mountains themselves are very different too. They reach heights of up to almost 10,000 feet. But they're not rocky like ours, looking more like huge blocks of ice. Such a landscape cannot be found anywhere else in our solar system. But you'll need to pack some layers if you want to come visit. The average temperature there ranges from minus 375 to minus 400 degrees. When taking a look at it from a distance, you can see it has some kind of big, heart-shaped thing on its surface, called the Tombaugh Regio. That's actually a vast plain the size of Oklahoma, or Texas, that's covered in nitrogen ice. Scientists discovered this heart actually makes the winds of the planet blow. Craters are also big here, sometimes more than 160 miles in diameter, and some of them show signs of filling and erosion. Erosion is when land is worn away by natural forces such as wind, water, and ice. It's the same process that formed many interesting things that you can see on the surface of the Earth, like valleys, coastlines, peaks, or mountains. The fact that some craters are there because of erosion tells us that tectonic forces must be slowly changing the surface of Pluto. 1/3 of its surface is water, but not the kind that we like to drink, more like a really hard frozen ice. Water is vital for the evolution of life, but not water that's this cold, so it's unlikely that any life has formed here. At least for now. But how do we know all these things about Pluto? Well, here's the basics. Astronomers discovered Pluto in 1930, and just like with plenty other moons and planets, they named it after a figure from Roman mythology, the ruler of the underworld. Pluto was considered the 9th planet of our planetary system until 2006, after which it was recategorized as a dwarf planet. Despite its recent demotion, it is still the largest and the oldest known object in this region of the Kuiper Belt, an outer shell full of other dwarf planets and icy bodies. New Horizons. That was the name of the very first space probe that astronauts sent to have a look at Pluto in 2006. It reached a distance of up to 7,800 miles. While there, it took some important photographs and collected lots of important information, and discovered some of the mysterious cosmic oddities found on the surface of Pluto. One interesting thing about this former planet is that it sometimes has an atmosphere and sometimes not. It has an oval-shaped orbit, which means, unlike most other planets, it doesn't travel around the sun in almost perfect circles. As a matter of fact, the sun is nowhere near the center of its orbit. When its orbit takes Pluto closer to the sun, the extra heat warms up a kind of thin atmosphere made primarily from nitrogen, an element our Earth also has in its atmosphere. Right after it's created, it gradually escapes Pluto's weak gravity. When the dwarf planet moves away from the sun, the atmosphere freezes and goes back to its solid state, falling back down to the surface of Pluto as nitrogen snowflakes. Pluto's interior is supposedly warmer than its surface. Some believe there's even an ocean deep underground. Despite being the largest known body in the Kuiper Belt, Pluto is still pretty small. It is smaller than the Earth's moon, around half the width of the United States. It has 5 spinning moons of its own, the biggest one half the size of Pluto itself. Our days last 24 hours, while one day on Pluto lasts 153. Earth needs 365 days to orbit the sun, while a year on Pluto lasts 248 Earth years. So, no birthdays there at all. It sits 3.6 billion miles from the sun, which is 40 times the distance of the Earth stands. If you were standing there, on Pluto, watching the night sky, you'd see the sun as just one small distant star, indistinguishable from the rest. Since Pluto has been demoted, Neptune is now the most distant planet of our solar system. It's also pretty fascinating. It's actually a huge ball of ice and gas. Yes, it's the densest gas giant in our solar system, but you still couldn't stand or walk on its surface. You would simply sink in. But if you could stand, you'd notice that the gravity force is similar to what we have on Earth. Despite its impressive size, though, Neptune is not visible to the naked eye from here. It's the windiest and coldest planet, and 1 year there lasts 165 Earth years. Still no birthdays. It takes more than 4 hours for the light coming from the sun to reach Neptune's surface. Our next gas giant is Uranus. 1 year on Uranus lasts 84 Earth years, so you can maybe get one birthday in there, but you better make it count. Just like Neptune, Uranus can't be seen without the help of advanced technology. The rest of the 6 planets can. But you can still see all 8 of them with binoculars or a smaller telescope. Now, pause the video, see if you can make your astronomy teacher proud, and try to remember which planet comes next in order from furthest to closest to the sun. You got it? That's right, it's Saturn, A+. Saturn is the 2nd biggest planet of our solar system, right behind Jupiter, and another gas giant where you'd sink in if you tried to walk on it. It's so gassy, you could put it in a lake and it would float. They call it the jewel of the solar system because it has a big ring system that kind of looks like a crown. Its rings are made up of dust, pieces of ice, and rock. Some of those pieces are as tiny as a grain of sand, while others are bigger than tall buildings. Next on the list, and completing our gas giant quartet, is Jupiter. Scientists call it a failed star since it's mostly made up of helium and hydrogen, just like the main star in our solar system, the Sun. But Jupiter doesn't have a mass big enough to start the chemical processes that turn it into a star. However, it is still the 5th brightest object in the solar system, right behind Mars. You probably have seen it when stargazing sometime, you just had no idea what it was. Okay, picture all the other planets combined and double their mass. That's a lot of mass, but Jupiter still has more mass than that. It's also the fastest spinning planet, so it takes only 10 hours to complete a full rotation on its axis. Our day lasts 24 hours. Imagine how it would look like to squeeze sleep, work, family, friends, hobbies, movies, all that in just 10 hours. I guess I'd have to sleep once every other day if I lived there. Now, picture this. Magnificent tall mountains, giant dust storms, volcanoes, deep valleys, craters. Mars. That red jewel scientists keep talking about being a potential new home for us. There were even some small meteorite pieces found on Earth that scientists realized were ejected from Mars. That's how close we are. If you love sunsets, you would definitely enjoy the ones here because they're incredibly blue, while the daytime sky is pinkish red. But when on Mars, you'd only see the sun at half its size compared to what we see on Earth. And of course, there's Earth itself. Seas, mountains, valleys, waterfalls, and of course, life. For 4.5 billion years, Earth has been home to so many different kinds of organisms that have lived, died, and lived again. And even though we know so much about our homeland, there's always something new to discover each and every day. The next planet, Venus, is the champion of superlatives. The hottest surface, the closest planet to the Earth, the biggest number of volcanoes, 1,600. If you compare it to other planets to our solar system, the brightest planet, with reflective clouds that make it so shiny you can see it from the surface of Earth. Oh yeah, and the slowest spinning body as well. It takes 243 Earth days for Venus to make just one single turn. You could literally walk faster than the planet's rotational speed. Venus also goes in the opposite direction of Earth, so sunsets there are set in the east, sunrises in the west. And last, but not least, Mercury. It doesn't have any moons or rings, and it's the smallest planet in our solar system. A year there lasts only 88 days. So get ready to expand that birthday budget. Mercury is the planet the closest to the sun, but not the hottest. Venus took that title. Mercury is not the hottest because there's no atmosphere to trap the sun's heat there. But it does have wrinkles. Only 1/2 of Mercury's surface faces the sun at any given time, meaning there's an incredible difference in the temperature on either side, and of course these sides switch as the planet rotates. The iron core of this planet has cooled and contracted over millions of years due to the rapid change in heat, which is why wrinkles have appeared on its surface. Well, that's a brief tour of all the planets of our solar system. And one dwarf planet. Sorry, Pluto. Thanks for watching.
This is Neptune. The next stop is Pluto. Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
One day, with top-notch future technologies, one stop from Neptune to Pluto won't seem much further than Times Square from Bryant Park today. There are huge ice mountains on Pluto, valleys that go further than your eyes can see, 160-mile large craters, almost as big as the largest one on Earth, and no life. The reasons are obvious. The long distance between Pluto and the Sun guarantees freezing temperatures on that dwarf planet. It also ensures a trip of a few billion miles. Plus, it's smaller than the Moon, so it would get crowded very soon if people started dwelling there. Still, there's one reason which makes life there not that far-fetched. The Sun has a lifespan and cycles within it. Our solar system used to be nothing but a cloud of gas and dust. As a result of a gravitational collapse at the center of this cloud, the gas and dust started gathering in specific, denser places. These pulled more and more matter as time went on, and something called conservation momentum made the mass start rotating and heating up because of immense pressure. Later, there appeared a disk similar to what Saturn has, but it was made of entirely different substances. And right in the center, there was the ball that eventually became the sun. A protostar is a young star that's still gathering its mass, and that's exactly what the sun was before the temperatures and pressures inside of it lighted up its core. Millions of years later, it became the sun we see every day. But it won't stay this way forever. It will heat up even more and eventually get bigger and denser, turning into a red giant. It may one day get big enough to swallow up Venus and Mercury. Chances are, it might swallow even planet Earth. Even if it doesn't devour our planet, the sun might get close enough to touch us. Well, if this happened, life on Earth wouldn't be possible. But then, in just a few minutes, the sun loses about 40% of its mass and shrinks about 10 times what it used to be. It's not as bright, and indeed, not as hot as it used to be. By this moment, Earth will have already been deserted. People might want to start traveling around space, or settle down on another planet where life is sustainable, like the exoplanet Kepler-62f, which, by the way, is even bigger than Earth. While all of this was happening, Pluto was changing. Before, every resource was frozen inside of the dwarf planet. Water, gases like methane, carbon monoxide, you name it. But as the sun was reaching its peak luminosity, Pluto was slowly warming up and losing a lot of what it had to the vastness of space. At the same time, an atmosphere formed up. If the atmosphere gets thick enough, it would create favorable life conditions. Then, instead of spaceships, a tiny percentage of us would be able to set up colonies on the dwarf planet. The temperature is comfortable there, almost t-shirt weather. It even resembles Earth a tiny bit. Canyons filled with water, beautiful endless fields with trees, and lots of space to run around, and mineral water pockets on the ground, good enough to drink. Pluto's rotations are different than Earth's. An Earth day is 24 hours, and sometimes it still feels like it never ends. But on Pluto, a whole rotation around the sun takes 153 hours, because it's pretty far away from the sun. After several hours without sleep, we get tired and our eyes get red. It means we'd have to take several naps throughout the day on Pluto. A year on Pluto equals 248 Earth years. Unless we come up with some sort of technology to get us to live that long, our entire lifespan would be less than half a year on the dwarf planet. So, houses on Pluto might need to be equipped with cryo chambers. Whenever you feel like dreaming for a long time, you jump in it and wake up 50 Pluto days later. On the dwarf planet, there are also seas and beaches. So it's just like a tiny Earth, far away from the actual Earth. The food on Pluto could be tastier. We might find a way to make the ingredients more savory and even try to grow them faster during the trip. You plant a carrot, and 2 days later, it's ready to be in your salad. There could also be new ingredients for our salads on Pluto. Maybe 2-meter-tall mushrooms we've never seen before. The animals we would take with us on the trip would get released into their new home forever. And with time, they would evolve and adapt to their new environments. The law of the jungle could change a bit too. Lions might not be kings anymore. Deer are. Their antlers are twice the size of what they used to be. But to be fair, so are the deer. Most of the animals that were already here used to live underwater. But with time, the amphibians started shifting to the surface, just like Earth at the beginning of life. Pluto could only be a temporary home though. Once the sun has finally reached its final phase, Pluto would get frozen and lifeless again. People instead would need to try to find a planet that stays in the Goldilocks zone of another galaxy. The Goldilocks zone is the exact proper distance from the star like the sun, where the temperature is perfect for the water to stay liquid. It's the rule scientists search for when looking for other planets that can sustain life. We can try setting new colonies on one such planet, or even try to set up our own artificial home. Not exactly a planet or a spaceship, but a combination of both. Something huge built right in space, say a wheel with gravity everywhere we go, so we don't fall off. It would float in space toward the new exoplanet, capable of fitting entire states in. This whole trip might happen just because the sun first grew too much, and then, having reached the culmination of its life cycle, it would finally become a white dwarf. It's going to be a pretty long journey, and entire generations will be born here. You'll have a choice. Sleep your way through the journey until humans finally reach their new exoplanet, or enjoy the trip in this fantastic spaceship. There's all you need on board. Malls bigger than those on Earth, large futuristic cities, even places to farm, fields with rich soil made artificially, and finally, after a long journey, the exoplanet. It's even somewhat better than Earth. The planet is giant and has more continents. The continent's center isn't as far from oceans, which means there aren't as many desert areas. Though the sun of this planet is an orange dwarf, it's not as hot as our yellow dwarf sun today. It's a bit smaller, but here's the kick. Orange dwarfs live somewhat longer. They remain stable for between 15 billion and 45 billion years. Despite that, this new planet is full of rainforests because the planet itself is warmer. It means more biodiversity and creatures we've never seen before. But even if nothing out there is suitable, we could try and terraform this planet instead. If we take Mars as an example, we could create a greenhouse effect by smashing ice-rich comets and releasing ammonia in them, making the planet warmer. We could also start planting trees. We'd probably need some Earth soil to do that, or we'd have to modify Mars's soil to be similar to ours. Sooner rather than later, the atmosphere would be close to the one we have on Earth. We'd be able to breathe, too, because of the trees. Then, we can melt Mars's polar ice caps and voila, water. The problem is the solar winds and sun explosions that might strip it of an atmosphere just as quickly as we can create one, if not faster. It has no magnetosphere either, which means it can't protect us from radiation, so long-term Mars wouldn't be a good choice. Maybe out there, in the vastness that is space, there is a perfect planet waiting for us.